The first thing we should tell you today is that we are watching and waiting for any news at all about Kamala Harris's running mate. The vice president has been meeting with candidates one-on-one at her home in Washington this weekend. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and Arizona Senator Mark Kelly are all meeting with her today. Former Attorney General Eric Holder, who's the guy who's overseeing the vetting process, has been seen exiting her house as well, and that's an important thing to watch for, too. And she's holding a rally on Tuesday night with her running mate in Philadelphia. So basically, we are clearly getting very, very close to a decision here. And if we learn anything new at all in the next hour, I promise I will let you know as soon as we know. But the fact is, no matter who she chooses, the announcement of this pick is going to build even more momentum on top of the already growing momentum for the Harris campaign. The vice president has been holding big, energizing rallies, like the one with Megan Thee Stallion, where she performed in Atlanta this week, where the rapper coined the phrase "Hotties for Harris." She brought on a number of all-star campaign veterans like David Plouffe, Stephanie Cutter, Jennifer Palmieri, and Mitch Stewart to add to an already seasoned team. The money is continuing to pour in at an insane pace. The Harris campaign said this week they raised a record-breaking $310 million in July. And in a brand new CBS News poll out just this morning, Harris has a 1-point edge nationally over Trump. And they are tied across the collective battleground states, which is the most important thing to watch, those battleground states. So the momentum is pretty clear to anyone watching. What is also clear is that all the attention on Harris, all the momentum, is driving Trump kind of crazy. And he is twisting himself into a pretzel as a result. And I'll tell you that this weekend was a weird one for Donald Trump, even by Donald Trump standards. I mean, at his own rally last night in Atlanta, his own rally, where, by the way, he had a much harder time filling the same venue Harris appeared at earlier in the week, he had some very strange things to say, like when he congratulated Vladimir Putin, of all people, for the historic prisoner swap that freed American citizens from Russia. He also repeatedly attacked Georgia's very popular, very beloved Republican Governor Brian Kemp for not being sufficiently loyal to him.
Atlanta is like a killing field, and your governor ought to get off his ass and do something about it. Brian Kemp, your governor, who I got elected, by the way, is a very disloyal person, isn't he? Very disloyal. Kemp and Raffensperger are doing everything possible to make 2024 difficult for Republicans to win. Kemp is very bad for the Republican Party. You can do a lot better, and you'll do a lot better with a better governor. His state has become a laughingstock over it. He's a bad guy, and he's not doing this country a good service. He's a bad guy, he's a disloyal guy, and he's a very average governor. Little Brian Kemp. Bad guy.
Okay, first of all, none of that is true. And beyond that, Brian Kemp is a widely popular Republican governor in a very important state where Trump was literally speaking. He was just saying that on the stage, in that home state. A guy who was reportedly open to campaigning with him this fall, despite not supporting him in the primary, but it doesn't seem like it anymore. Like I said, Trump is twisting himself into this very strange, weird pretzel, right? I mean, earlier in the day on Saturday, before all of the dictator congratulating and bashing of popular members of his own party in their states, Donald Trump pulled out of a debate he had already agreed to. Trump said he would not be attending the already scheduled ABC News debate on September 10th. Instead, he proposed a debate on Fox News, of course, a week earlier with a full arena audience. Let's pause on that for a moment. He's saying he will not participate in the debate he already agreed to some time ago unless it turns into a MAGA rally with Fox moderators. Got it. For her part, Harris responded by saying, "It's interesting how any time, any place becomes one specific time, one specific safe space. I'll be there on September 10th, like he agreed to. I hope to see him there." Guys, all of this is what it looks like when one candidate has the momentum and the other has no idea what to do about it and is driving him a little crazy. Here's the thing. Kamala Harris is going to continue to own the spotlight for a while here. Her VP pick is coming literally any moment. She'll hold rallies with her running mate all across battleground states next week. A couple of weeks later, there'll be the Democratic convention. And Donald Trump is going to hate every second of that. You know why? Because he loves attention. And he will get more and more outrageous and unhinged as a result. we're likely to see more ugly, racist attacks like the one we saw from Trump this week in Chicago when he questioned the vice president's racial identity. The good news is she seems ready to respond to that one, too.
It was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better. The American people deserve a leader who tells the truth, a leader who does not respond with hostility and anger when confronted with the facts. We deserve a leader who understands that our differences do not divide us. They are an essential source of our strength.
That's a pretty good response to all of it, I think. I mean, to the racist attacks, to the unhinged rallies, to the games over debates. It's the same old stuff, and America deserves better. She doesn't make it entirely about her. She makes it about the people they are both running to represent. Not a bad message, if you ask me. James Carville is a longtime Democratic strategist. Reverend Al Sharpton is the president of the National Action Network and the host of Politics Nation. These are two of the wisest and most fun people to talk politics with, and they join me now. So thank you both so much. I've been so excited about this conversation. So, James, let me start with you, because the debate and Donald Trump's actions over the last 24 hours are just, I mean, a little strange. But it reminded me of when President George H.W. Bush was hesitant to debate Bill Clinton in 1992. And you recruited, I'm sure you remember this, Clinton supporters to show up at Bush rallies in a chicken suit. There's some video footage there, probably brings you back. I mean, feels like we have kind of another chicken on our hands here. But how do you think, you saw the vice president's response, how do you think she should be handling this?
Well, thank you, Jen. First of all, I want to thank Reverend Al publicly for participating in the documentary. The Hollywood guys told me you crushed it, Reverend. And I think that she should say, I'll debate him on Fox on the night of September 18th, because I happen to know he's going to be in Manhattan on the 18th, because that's when they're going to sentence him. Oh. And I'm sure Judge Merchan would give a delay in the execution of sentencing to allow him to show up at a debate. So if you want to have a debate, let's have it on Fox, and let's have it September the 18th when he's in an ankle bracelet.
That's quite a visual. I tend to agree that she should just do the Fox debate. Why not? But Reverend Sharpton, what do you think?
I totally agree with Mr. Carville because I think he's right. I think it also will emphasize to the public, if she were to make that response, that this is a race between a prosecutor and a felon. Let's not take off the table. He has a sentencing date. And I think Carville's right. We can ask the judge not to remand him so he can go to the debate, or ask his parole officer, can he attend the debate? But why are we taking off the table? This is a convicted felon that is debating a woman who was the prosecutor in San Francisco and then elected state prosecutor of all the state of California before she went to the Senate and became vice president.
No question. And I don't think anyone should take that off the table. It's an interesting idea to do it the day of the sentencing. So there's a couple questions here. But I agree. I think she's a good debater and could be good no matter what the forum is. Let me ask you guys, I've been dying to ask you guys about the VP process. I know you've both spoken to it a little bit. And James, let me start with you, because you've said, and I agree with this, that the VP pick, it's not going to massively, it historically hasn't massively moved the electoral needle. I mean, people shouldn't have that expectation, I guess I should say. Sometimes it's 1 point, sometimes 2 points, sometimes nothing. Historically, it's basically been barely a bump. But there's been reasons that people have picked their running mates, right? I mean, Clinton picked Gore, two young guys. Obama picked Biden, older senator with foreign policy experience. It's about chemistry. It's also about complementing. So let me start with you, James. Who do you think politically would complement Harris the best of the people you've seen out there?
Well, it's really not enough to me to say. I would be totally satisfied with any of them.
Yeah.
What we had was generational, and it really made a difference. And I'm sorry, the J.D. Vance thing has hurt Trump, and Trump knows it. He's a hit dog, and he's barking because, we say out in rural America, it's the hit dog that barks. And Donald Trump is one hit dog, and he's barking. And this Vance thing is blown up in his face, like he's getting scratched like a cat.
Literally a cat, but by unmarried cat ladies, perhaps. I don't even know.
There you go.
Yeah, but do you have a view? I mean, electorally, maybe doesn't matter. Is there anything? You know, she's obviously a strong candidate. Is there anything that would help complement her from what you see out there politically?
Maybe a little bit. None of these people would hurt her in the least. All right, it's just a question of what is the need that she wants to fulfill, and she's earned the right to make that choice herself. And we, as people like Reverend Al and I, who are good Democrats, we're going to fall in line and salute whoever it is. And there's nothing that we're going to say here today that's going to sway it one way or the other. So I'm just ready to salute and get it going.
No question. Well, let me ask you, Reverend Charbon, you know her well. You've run for president yourself. You've thought about these types of choices. What do you think? I mean, what kind of a person, you can name names if you want, but kind of what qualities or what do you think she would be looking for?
I think she will be looking for someone that agrees with her on the direction of the country, that is not trying to in any way not follow the policies and vision she's outlined. And I think someone that has the chemistry to work with her. A lot of this is about chemistry. In the 3 or 4 presidents that I've had access to, particularly with President Obama and Joe Biden, I always observed the chemistry they have with each other in the room. Mm-hmm. You could have someone that is the best candidate. You could have someone that is aligned with you in terms of policy. But if the chemistry doesn't work, they're not going to be the one you want to work with you in the White House.
No question. I feel like the Trump and Vance chemistry might be awkward at this point in time, if I were to guess.